Hello, everybody, and welcome to Rocket Lasso Live, episode 27 of season 3. How is everyone doing today? I hope you're doing awesome. I'm doing well. Actually, I started getting what felt like a bad headache, like an oncoming headache, and I took to Excedrin, and they're kicking in. And what I like about Excedrin, if you're taking headache medicine, I really like Excedrin, and they have caffeine in it, and they kick in really quick. So, like, within 5 minutes of taking it, the caffeine helps get rid of the headache, but you also get like this energy burst. So I don't like taking medicine unless I have to. I'm not like avoiding it, but in general, I prefer that my body take care of stuff when it can. So typically, if I get bad headache, I'll take like a hot shower or just try and go to sleep and sleep through it. But I try and imagine back in the day, like go back, I don't know when like Tylenol got invented, but it wasn't that long ago. Like 60 years ago, there wasn't Tylenol type of thing. And just trying to imagine how people got through like having headaches and not being able to do anything about it. It's ridiculous. But in any case, I'm going to be extra high energy, at least from a burst. Oh yeah, and then actually I already feel like high energy, which is fun. And then I had bought an entire watermelon, and it wasn't the texture of it. It felt a little grainy, so I didn't enjoy it that much. So I ended up chopping up this entire watermelon and putting it in the blender and just extracting all the watermelon juice from it and mixing it with my normal tea. So I've got like super watermelon tea, which is delicious, but it's been giving me a bunch of sugar today. But anyway, I'm feeling cool and awesome and high energy, and the headache is fading away quickly. Of course, we're here to answer Cinema 4D questions from everybody. You saw at the beginning there the really fun duck animation. So if you heard last week, we made that kind of mechanical, very simple mechanical duck. It only had one hinge in it that would walk down. And I ended up running a few simulations until one of them looked pretty good and rendering the whole thing out. But I really like that duck. And as somebody had commented, the music, I love the music. I found I got a couple questions. It would be really great if anybody, for my own like style of things, I really like that old-timey music, like high energy old-timey, and I really like the record noises that are played during that. And I found a website that had a bunch of that's supposed to be in the public domain, and I had this months ago, and I went through a bunch of them. Any ones I thought had like this very specific emotional vibe, I downloaded them. But then I tried to post that to Instagram, and then Instagram said that it was copyright claimed because of the music. But well, at least the website, it said everything that they had was in the public domain because it was like 100 years old or something. So I just don't know, but I would love to find more of that type of music and make more of that type of thing. I guess my idea's there, but it's difficult to take on additional projects. But it was really fun to make. There were some different simulations that I don't have rendered out or anything, but some of them the ducks would land and then like a couple of them fell backwards off the ramp. I really wished one of them had fallen backwards on that because it's just funny for at least one duck to fall back. But the just for the randomness of those ducks, I put a big turbulence in there, and I just put the turbulence to 5 degrees, and then after that's just the randomness of Cinema 4D dynamics. It was really fun. Yeah, Dean, totally. Oh, it says it's holding your message. Allow. So anyway, we got lots of people here and saying hello. We got some people on YouTube. We got lots of people here on Twitch. Thank you so much, everybody. After we have another product which might launch in a week, but we might delay it because we were sneaking in some extra features into this plugin, and the extra features are adding extra complications. So now it goes to, do we yank those new features out, or do we delay it a little bit and make sure those features work better? So we got to make that decision. I couldn't have a meeting this morning with my brother to figure that out before the stream, so we got to do it. And even now, it's like I really wanted that version out in the beta, so it's all over the place. Anyway, I'm trying to think of any other news items. Unfortunately, all of the, COVID cases are going up again, so there's supposed to be events that are going to be happening later, like NAB for Maxon, and who knows if that happens. And we were planning half-res this year, and we announced half-res in Chicago for this year, but it's going to be a really small one. Like, we can only fit like 150 people, and it's just going to be like a hangout in kind of a outdoorsy bar area, and it was no presentations or anything. But now I think a lot of people are like, oh, is there an event or is there not? And yeah, it's a weird time for that stuff too. But anyway, I've got a lot of different projects and a lot of different things that are all happening at the exact same time. Sky actually does have an interesting question, which is, can you run through the basics of how plugins are made? I definitely don't want to create more. Oh yeah, and just as a heads up, or I didn't finish the thought, but Dean is mentioning that yes, half res this year is branded as quarter res because it's a way scaled down one. It was always the plan when it comes to half res that there's always potential. Like even when we came up with the very first version of it, like almost 10 years ago, it was like, oh, half res ended up being a great name. We had a lot of different ideas for what it might be called, but in the end, we loved half res, and it was like, oh, we could always do a quarter res, and then if we go and make a bigger conference, if it turns into like a multi-day conference, then you could get the full res ticket. So it's always been a concept, and who knows where that ends up going in the future. But yeah, all that is true. But anyway, yeah, Sky asking about how plugins are made, the basics of it. It's a little bit difficult to explain, well, because there's different aspects to it. I have never personally made a plugin go from start to finish to being publishable, because my brothers have always stepped in at that stage. But essentially, the basics are you end up you write, just like you could open up a script in Cinema, you could make the equivalent of that script and then put it into a standalone thing. And there's some differences between making a Python plugin and C++. The C++ is always more complicated because you end up having to compile it. But then there's a whole lot of different files. Like you have to make a resource folder, and everything that's associated with it has to go in there, and it gets published. And once you compile, then it essentially scrambles it so that people can't read the code. And then you have to do different things for the PC and different things for the Mac and different versions for each one. It's pretty involved. And then for our side, we have to design icons, and we have to design any of the custom buttons. We end up doing a lot of custom things in the plugin. There's also like, I don't know, I can't remember all of them, but there's like 8, 9, or 10 different types of plugin in Cinema, where there's object plugins, there is a tag plugin, there are command plugins, there are like a shader plugin. There is, all of these are conceptually very different. So yeah, there's a lot to consider, and it's really, it's simple to be like, oh, here's a plugin that does, like command plugins are the easiest because essentially it's just like execute this thing one time. So it could be something as simple. A command plugin is like a script where it does something one time because you click the button once. So that's the easiest type. It could be like, oh, search through all of this stuff and rename every object, name sphere, rename it to be cube. And that could just be a loop and whatnot. But at the end of the day, it all just goes to needing to know code and whatnot. Oh, Dean just made that up. Yeah, it is officially quarter res. If anybody's in Chicago, here, I'll put a link in the chat. I don't expect it. But if anybody is in Chicago or nearby, and if everything in the world is somewhat reasonable, let me see if I can find the link. Quarter res, half res, Eventbrite. I got that duck song stuck in my head. Screen is loading. Yeah, here we go. Share the screen. Boop. Okay, yeah, so here's quarter res. I'll put the link in the chat, but yeah, so we're just setting this up. Just a simple thing. We even updated the logo for quarter res, which I thought was cute. But yeah, it's September 15th if you're in the Chicagoland area. So here's a link if anybody happens to be here. $5 a ticket, which enters you into the raffle if you're there in person, of course. Oh boy. Okay, so anyway, hello to everyone. There's too many people today to go shouting out all the names. Oh, another thing I need to do is, well, as soon as all the plugins are out, I really need to go and unlock. I need to set it up so that people could do like the stickers and stuff inside of, like, there's all the extra bonus things where somebody could like donate money or do a sticker thing or subscribe, all the weird little, Twitch and YouTube live stuff, which I never bothered to set up. It'd be cool to start making like the custom icons and all those different things. It's difficult. Yeah, we have reached out to, just following up a question from, I think, Thurl. I'm not sure how you pronounce your THRL, but yeah, it's difficult to collaborate with another person to do the plugins, and we have reached out to certain people to be like, hey, maybe we can do this thing, maybe we can do that, and nothing ever works out. Like, it's really tricky, and then typically there's money involved and whatnot. It gets complicated. People live all over the world as well, which adds additional complications. But Anyway, let us. I think it's time to answer a proper question. We've already been going for 10 minutes. I know some people are seconding Crossfader's fungus time lapse, which would be neat to check out. Yeah, and I know you were talking about that earlier, so I will definitely jump into that. Okay, anyway, quick notes on questions. If you're posting a link, you'll have to do it on Twitch, not on YouTube. YouTube doesn't allow links, but you can just type out a question. I'll check it out. If I don't get to your question, feel free to repost it as I wrap up, and I tend to jump around all over the place, so just don't spam it. And besides that, make sure I can see the artist or studio. Call out the specific effect you want, because who knows. I would like to try and tackle several questions today and not just focus on one, but it is fun to spend a little bit of time and render something as well, so we'll see how that goes. Anyway, I would like to click on Crossfader's question. Boop. And mute and tear. Okay, is this real? That depth of field looks so like fantasy. So moving art, I'm assuming this is actual, the official film trailer. Okay, moving art. So I'm assuming that this is like a time-lapse movie. Let me make sure that go to the highest setting. This didn't link to a specific time. Did Crossfader call out a specific time? Because that time is needed, because there could be dozens of different effects. Scroll, 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 scroll. Scroll, where? Oh, many references in this. Okay, so you didn't have a specific one. For future reference, it is good to, if there's a more specific one, because, you know, we could spend infinite time. Oh, there's some CG in there. But yeah, those are some real time lapses as well. But yeah, I want to know somebody's specific question of one, because I don't know. I mean, the point of this is not for me to choose, but to, you know, answer something that somebody else had as a question. I should probably make the screen a little smaller so that YouTube doesn't yell at me. The uses of CG in this are interesting. Like, that's CG. Huh, there's a lot of CG in here. I would have thought that this would all be not CG. Because that's not CG. Whoop. Cute. Oh, fun. Oh, those are cool. Let's see. What's one that might be fun and challenging? That's not. Yeah, that one didn't start early enough. Oh, I do love these. But I feel like we need some particle stuff to do something like that. And there's also, oh man, I've watched so many videos. I would love to make like a little rig that properly makes that. It would be fairly advanced. There's so many. See, here's the problem. Is like there's all these different ones, and now I don't know which one to pick. Black. Like I really, actually, see that's the one I'm actually kind of most intrigued by. Not that one. Not that one. This one. I love the stuff where it's like it keeps on growing. You see how like everything here isn't really modifying, but it's kind of like this. On the end, it's almost like it's magically appearing as it continues to grow. From a texture point of view, that's incredibly challenging, but I love that type of thing. Like from a visual standpoint. Yeah, so that's funny to lean on. Scroll, 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 scroll. Okay. Scroll, scroll. Okay. Back to cinema. So let's take a look at how we might be able to do some of this textury type stuff. I would love to do redshift, but redshift doesn't properly have a proximal. I know that one of the X particles, they have like a tag that's equivalent to a vertex map, and it can be live. Honestly, I don't see why the cinema one can't be live either. It could just exist in space, but that's just not the way they designed it. For some super duper basics, you could. I'm trying to think of how do I want to generate the initial shape. I guess we could just draw a crazy spline, but that. Yeah, my thoughts are going up 1,000 miles a minute right now. The way I typically draw a spline, I'll make this a B-spline, but the way I typically do it is, like I draw it two-dimensionally, so you see I'm just drawing this from the side. Bump, 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 bump. Okay, Yeah, I draw that from the side, and then we can go into a three-dimensional view and give it depth. So what I would do is like grow, and you've probably seen me do this before. Grow, and as we go through, I'm now giving it that third dimension. Over. I'm just guessing. Who knows what it's going to look like. Okay, that seems to go all the way through. So yeah, so we got some kind of crazy shape that's got a dimension. And let's change that spline to be a B-spline. Yeah, looks pretty nice as a curvy B-spline. And yeah, well, B-splines are really forgiving too, where we can take this and bend it. You see how the curve is maintained. It looks really clean all the way through. So it's kind of hard to make a bad looking B-spline. Let's see. Let's give it more depth. Now that we've scaled it out to have depth, it's really easy to just scale. Move this back to 0. I kind of want it to be balanced overall. That's what I'm trying to do right now. Just have it be weighted to look like it balances in the center. Might have gone a little overboard there. Okay. Cool. Good enough. So, if this is to be built on a volume, it's a little bit manual right now, but one of the best ways to grow an overall length, there's two different ways, but one of the more straightforward ones is to use a, I say more straightforward, but it's still a little bit clunky, is use a mow spline. And in the mow spline, set it to spline mode, set the display mode to line, feed the current spline into the source spline, and that should create a, I'm going to hide the original. Now you see we have a copy spline, but now that gives us a slider from start to end, and I can drag the end back so you can see I can get this constant growth. Now I'm immediately seeing a small problem. We'll see if we can get around it, but you see how, look as I drag this kind of in a constant speed, you see how the speed of that line, it's constantly kind of like zipping forward slowly, you know, faster, slower. That is basing in on here, and the intermediate points are adaptive. So we want to set that something like uniform. And don't have too many, actually, yeah, let's see how many subdivisions we need. A couple. We want it to be smooth-ish. Okay, back to even higher. That should hopefully put an even amount of spacing pretty much between all the points. It's not actually, but now hopefully you'll see as I drag this, you see how that feels like way more of a constant speed instead of like accelerate, slow down, accelerate. Okay, so now we've got something that can draw on. So simple keyframe right now. Let's make this double long, so 180. Keyframed at 0, fast forward to the end, go up to 100%. So, you know, that should be it's linear right now. Or, yeah, it's easing in and easing out, but that's fine. I don't mind it slowing down a little bit at the end. And the most straightforward thing we could do here, especially if you have something magically growing, would be throwing this into a volume builder. So, into the volume builder, immediately into a volume mesher. Let's fast forward a bit. Interesting. Very interesting. Why is nothing showing up right now? That doesn't look like it's being acknowledged as a spline, unless the density voxel. Okay. It's not giving me the spline controls. You'll see the mow spline. If I click it, there is no radius, which is odd. Let's see. Well, first of all, there is sometimes a bug in the interface where that doesn't show up, so I'm gonna experimentally create a smooth and then click on the mow spline. No, that didn't fix it. Sometimes like deselecting it, I'm gonna turn it on and off, and then go click on the mow spline. It's sometimes the new settings or the settings appear. This time it's not. So I'm going to attempt to throw the mow spline into a connect object, and then go back in. And there, now look, now it's giving us the spline settings. When in doubt, use the connect object, of course, but I don't know why it didn't like it. Turn off weld. That should just work all the way through, and now we actually get our radius, which is the important part. Mow spline is weird and specific, so from a coding point of view, like mow spline could be coded very differently, and they could have just forgotten that exception. So anyway, I would like to, density's fine, voxel size we can probably lower, but we want a lot of radius in here. In fact, we're probably going to go a little bit overboard. Yeah, we're going to keep going up and up. Okay, so that's starting to get pretty big, and we don't quite want it to intersect. We might clean the line up a bit. But let's see what our density is, NB, which is a lot. So with it being super huge, we don't need anywhere near that density. Yeah, it being relatively low in the circumstance is not a bad thing. Back to the original spline and select the point. And I just want to make sure that these are not quite merging into each other. That's better. Okay, and then maybe I shouldn't have done that yet, because what we really want to do is give this different thickness. So near the end, we can shrink that down, or yeah, shrink that down. Let's shrink it down here. But then it's a weird fungus mushroom thing, so we could, you know, make the radius be a little bit more variable, like get a little bit bigger, a little bit smaller, something like that, a little bit random. Even now I feel like the radius could be even more, 45 perhaps. Cleon, welcome to the stream. Yeah, I'll keep an eye out for your question. But I'm gonna wrap this one up first. I always try and answer questions from newer people whenever possible, as much as I appreciate the questions from the regulars. I'm just rounding things out, trying to make it look a little bit more visually appealing. What's going on right there? Yeah, that's all good. Anyway, well, you know, just as we're set up right now, especially with the relatively low, oh, I didn't even think about that, but that's kind of fine. But you see how this radius is changing because it's remapping based on the spline in that moment. So that's something to keep in mind. There would be ways around that, and that could potentially cause us trouble. And honestly, I don't even know where I'm going with this necessarily, but you know, let's just keep plowing ahead. Okay, so I would like to get some displacement going on this overall geometry, which would have to happen during the measure point. So inside of MoGraph, I'll create a plane effector. The plane effector I will rename to deform. I feel like it's really important to do that because effectors do something very specific. So when you make it into a deformer, it's really easy, even later on, or you open up the file later, and you're like, what is this thing doing? But anyway, set that to deform the points. Get rid of Y, add in a bit of Z. This is going to inflate the overall shape. But now, inside of fall off, we could add in a random field and start getting a little bit of random going on. Scale up this noise until we can get a bit of uniformity. And I think with something like this, we do want a decent chunk of randomness. So you can see how that's getting more and less random in various places. We could set this to go positive and negative, but you know what? It's not looking too bad just going positive. And we could layer up several additional ones. There is no, this is based on the field, so those are static. So this should still grow through that shape really well. You can see how those are just growing and, you know, being affected. I guess as it does inflate, it will pass slightly through different things. So parts of it are, I guess, no, that makes sense even from the growth we did. So it's slightly growing and shrinking, which I kind of, that's the only thing I wish it wasn't doing that it is currently doing. But, and I do feel like at the end, we'd want it to like super slow down. So we could grab this. Actually, let's open up our F curve and take a look at that spline. And this can, I'm going to start out pretty quick, and then it can a little bit extra ease out. Holding on control, I can snap that on that axis, so that should really ease out now. We get that initial growth quickly, and then finally blur. Boop. Cool. All right, now, the real thing I wanted to do was trying to figure out some ways to get a particular type of texture on it, but like I said, I kind of went through here doing it without a real plan. So we could get some texture on the tops. We could get an overall cloud of noise. I would love, I'm trying to think of any way we could get a texture that travels along the overall shape. But, because we have a spline that we could extract that from, and if we made this editable, we could do it via a vertex map. Like here, let me even show you, because it's kind of cool. We'll have to undo a bunch. Actually, I'm worried, I haven't saved it yet, so let's save. Give me a moment to put this on the screen, because I think, yep, it was saving into a secret folder. Okay. back to scene files, and this will be mushroom experiments. Experiments. Close enough. All right. I'm gonna put a recall tag. There's a plugin that we make, but I'm just doing it so I can bring this back in case I need to. It might disappear. No, it didn't. Cool. Okay, so now I've just got that geometry, and because I've got that geometry, and we've got this original spline, just to show you, we could add on a selection, set vertex weight, set it to 0, turn on a field. And then, based on this spline, you can see how we're going from red to yellow, which is mapping along the spline, which is great. And inside of that spline, we could go to remapping. Oh, I thought we could colorize that. Oh, no, we can't. I'm going to delete that because even better is a other color vertex, or vertex color. Turn on fields for that one and do the exact same thing. Drag in the spline. What's cool about this one is inside of color remap, we can set that to be a gradient, and now we can draw anything we like in here. So in this case, load a preset, and let's just make a rainbow one. You can see how we are rainbow colorizing that entire thing. Again, though, this only works if it's been made editable, which, infuriating. Because, man, that looks cool already. Think. If you bake something to Alembic, I'm gonna make a duplicate of that, delete that recall tag, and then double click recall, and now you see I brought my thing back and I still have this new one I made. So that's why I want to do that. If we bake this to Alembic, what happens? Bake as Alembic. It should be pretty quick. Okay, now it's constantly changing a point count, so that can't morph. Turning off the original, I should be able to scrub. Or not. Oh yeah, Alembic doesn't like the volume mesher sometimes. I have run into that. So when in doubt, put in a connect object. Turn off the weld, and now bake as Alembic. Boink. Typo. Are we making a colon? Let's see if that worked. Kinda doesn't look like it did. Oh, it did work. Nope, maybe it didn't. Dang it, it didn't. Why is it, what do we gotta do to make that work? Come on, Alembic. What do we need to do to make that work? Because as soon as it's not returning that mesh, it's like, oh, it didn't know what it's doing. That's throwing me off a bit. Alembic. I feel like that should have returned properly. I could try one more time, but I don't know why it would be any different. But you never know. Nope, still not the proper icon. If I make it editable, you see it's just a null. I wonder if it's because there's no geometry at the beginning. That's just a wild guess, but like is Alembic being like, well, like there's nothing here, so like I guess I don't do anything. So as a pure experiment, let's set the initial growth to 1%. So in the beginning there is some geometry. And now that there is some geometry, let's directly bake the volume mesher. Bake as Alembic. Well, it's different this time. It's different. Were we right? Aha! Okay. Well, we just learned something. That was just me making a wild guess from kind of a code point of view. Like, it was like, oh, what am I baking? Am I baking a spline? No. Am I baking this? Am I baking geometry? Well, there's no polygons. So it didn't know what it was. So now it does know what it was. Anyway, now we've got that. And now we end up with this volume mesher polygon. Unfortunately, you see the, even though it kind of looks like it's a made editable thing, it's not made editable. If we do make it editable, then unfortunately, it's not animated anymore. It's kind of baked down, and now we can't run on it. When you have an alembic baked and the polygon count isn't changing, you can actually make it editable and it'll still animate based on like a tag that was applied to it. But you can't do that if the mesh is constantly changing. So that's unfortunate. Unfortunate, but true. There is a minuscule, tiny little chance, and I'm going to save this. There's a tiny little chance we could trick it with a correction deformer, but this is risky. So there's a correction deformer, which of course means we have a live series of points. So we could technically modify that. I would think we could. That's weird. No, my axis isn't appearing. I'm not sure why. But anyway, now why is there a vertex color tag on it already? I'm not sure. But anyway, can we turn on fields? There's a chance that we just freeze up on this, which is why I'm being a little bit careful. And I want to take that vertex tag, which is now getting point information from the correction deformer, and feed it in via a spline. And we do have the color remap. If I say gradient, you see here, here's where there's a little bit of hope, but I still don't think it's going to work. You see how it's actually going from black up to white. And just so we can see it clearly, I will set that to be the rainbow gradient. You see it is applying through. Now that that's happening, is it possible to texturize this via that? We'll start out with a vanilla cinema material. So inside of the color channel, I will say I would like to feed you a vertex map, which can be fed vertex color, and drop that in. And I don't expect to see anything here, but if we apply, yeah, it's applied. That's the only thing that should render. If I say render, dang, okay, no color on it. I'll rename it just in case. Vertex map, vertex color. I've renamed it, so put that back in again. Hey! Okay, I think I had the other tag in, but look, we now have colors coming from the correction deformer, which is in a way is kind of like a connect object, but it could actually hold a vertex map, and that's now transferring to the actual final mesh. Like I said, this is a little bit dangerous. It might slow things down, but I am now getting colors on it. Now, we baked that to Alembic. Did we have to bake it to Alembic? Let's try dropping this onto our original rig, and it's working, so I'm going to save. Can I just move this correction deformer onto the original rig, put the material on there as well, turn that off, and now we're just seeing the new one? And yeah, look, see, there's a difference. There's a difference. Now that we bake to Alembic, when I click on this correction deformer, there's no colors on it anymore. It's not seeing it from the volume mesher, but baking it to Alembic, it did seem to be able to see it. And if I, although, that's weird. When I render, it is rendering in spite of having not seen it, but it's, you see it's really patchy? That's strange. But it could be that this is just remembering, it might just be remembering the points from what it used to be because it can't update. No, that seems kind of accurate. And it's, I'm not seeing the patchiness. Well, maybe it's tricky to see. I'm not sure. I mean, I prefer, of course, to run this from our more parametric rig and using the correction deformer to work around it. And it's still running pretty well. The correction deformer will slow it down significantly because it's having to rebuild every single frame. But hey, if it's giving us some colors. Okay, so if that's giving us color, then we can continue. Hopefully there's some additional tricks we could do there as well. With color inside of something like this vertex map, we should be able to just do this field stuff and keep it all kind of clean and parametric. I'm curious if we can get a directional one just from a shader. So the only way I can think to do it would be a shader field. The shader field is currently overriding everything. Wait, it was even just showing the colors. I'm a little thrown off by when it's displaying one thing or another. Because look, it's now giving us the colors where I'd swear before it wasn't giving us the colors, but who knows? Anyway, we're now seeing the color or the shader field. Now the shader field, we could do something like throw in a noise, and yeah, we can see some varied colors. Can we feed in a fall off? Well, let's do a Fresnel just to see. Yeah, see, the Fresnel seems to work. So if I render that, yeah, so the Fresnel is transferring on. Obviously, we don't need to do that. But can a fall off? It seems to be. Yeah, see, that is now shading from the top. So let's say we wanted to like put snow on the top of it or something. You know, you see how that fall off is now falling off. So, you know, that's cool. So, you know, in theory, we could layer up a lot here. I wouldn't necessarily want to do it via the correction because we can do this directly in the shader. But yeah, that's neat. But I would like to do this in Redshift if we can. Okay, think. We can do a fall off in Redshift, although you have to use the state, and I always forget what direction it is. If somebody wants to shout out now before we get to it, in the state, how do we get the equivalent of the fall off? Because we have to take it, split the colors, and I forget which version of state we need. So if somebody wants to answer that before I get to it. But anyway, so that's now growing, and we're getting the colors. Hopefully, yeah, they're in the viewport. You see there's like a little bit of lag where it's like it messed up, but when it refreshes, possibly in the next frame, or maybe if I click something, yeah, you see it updates and it's properly there. So I think at render time it will look correct, but you never know. Let's see, several other things. This is kind of new territory because, you know, we've never been able to transfer a vertex map onto kind of a pseudo live mesh. Actually, this is a very live mesh. So, and because the correction deformer automatically updates every single update, you know, that should just work. So you can see we get these colors going. Keep in mind that we have some additional options. Well, hopefully, here's a test. I'm gonna make a second vertex map, rename it to 2, and we've got these sharp colors, but are we able to blur it? So I'm gonna delete those and drag the first one in, and now it's bringing that in as a color, and it's set to nearest. What happens if we say average? And it's a pretty big average right now. And is it properly updating? It's hard to tell. An average would just be blurring them, and we don't have that many colors going. But let's see if I'm going to type 1, and let's see if we see a difference. Hard to tell. I think we'd be able to tell. That's a cube, so distances are relatively small. So let's do 500. Okay, yeah, okay. When I went to 500, you definitely see that down here it's kind of blue, and up here it's kind of green. So it is successfully blurring. So in the same way that we could blur a regular vertex map, we can also do it with a vertex color. So, okay, just another tool in the toolbox. Keep that in mind. Delete that for now. We don't need to worry about it. Okay, so let's go back to, let me see if anybody answered about the state node redshift directly, colorize the inside of directly. Let me do. This, of course, change generation. Some people are talking about make a mask based on the length from the make sim. I'm not entirely sure I'm following. It sounds interesting if you can. If we use a state node inside of Redshift to do the texturing as a property which gives you the point positions in space. Oh yeah, okay, point positions in space. So yeah, that's something. I mean, this is moving along a spline, not just in space, but you know, there is potential for that type of thing. Anyway, if we go and look at our reference again, so we were kind of making this crazy looking shape. Why don't we just jump into Redshift and start tinkering around a bit? Several things we're going to need right away. Why don't we make some actually, we use a landscape. Why not? How often do we use landscapes? And we'll just scale that up a bunch. Do a different seed. Seed. Seed is 0. Well, unusual. Cinema always has a seed of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that seed was throwing me off. Looks like I have my axis turned off. The shortcut for axis, if your axis ever accidentally disappears, Alt-D is the shortcut for pulling in the axis. if it went missing on you. Okay, that's the ground, and we're gonna need some sort of lighting. So a redshift dome light, and we could load in, let's try an HDRI Haven again. Last time it didn't load up for us, but HDRI Haven, HDRs. Hey, it loaded this time. We want to be outdoors, something kind of sunny. No, maybe. I like this one. So we're gonna go into this forest. I'm gonna go real small. So we'll just do 1K. I mean, that's more than enough for kind of the lighting and reflections. Save file. Is it still downloading? I'm gonna drag that to the other window. Show all downloads. There it is. Open the containing folder. Cuts. I'm going to put that HDR into the current scene files inside of a texture folder. TEX. Paste. Okay, I did that in another window, but now we can, inside of our dome light, load in episode 27, scene files, texture, forests. Boom, cool. Okay. And now opening up our Redshift render view, hit go. This always gets to be a bit of a pain in a live stream to, this when it goes to third-party renderers, you really want two monitors, which I have, but I can't display both during a live stream. It might be pushing it outside of its. Let's get the Redshift render settings going. So Redshift in S24, you can go to Advanced, and there's the very nice settings here. We can just change the threshold. In a live stream, I'll set that to 1. We got globals turned on, global illumination. So we got 4 bounces. We'll jump that to 5. And we're getting a decent amount of light on this thing. Okay, cool. So right now it's just a rainbow. It's looking really nice. Like that, the color's transitioning great on there. And you can even see the GI bouncing from there up to the green on here. So cool. All right, so we want to make this thing look a little bit more fungi-like. And we've got this texture to maybe map on the entire thing. Let's jump to the end of the animation where we can actually see the entire thing and try and actually get some texture going. So we'll be semi-accurate to the reference. So yeah, we might be able to pull some colors from here. I can't show it too well on one monitor, but I'm going to use the color picker and pick colors for our base gradient here. So the bottom one, I will pick, I'm not going to pick the purple. I'm going to pick kind of this tan. And I'm going to compensate for the low lighting, so I'm going to brighten everything up, maybe give it a little, my interpretation of it. And then, honestly, it doesn't change much. So let's just go to a lighter version of that here. We'll go a bit brighter. And then it does seem to go to a pretty bright yellow, way brighter than that is represented. And pull that back a bit, and then it gets to be fairly light at the end again. And space these out a bit better. That should be near the edge. That transitions in relatively sharply. Let's put that a little. Really want that yellow to stick out, and then just so you can see, this is, I was just getting this base color, and now based on the top angle, we want to get those purples sneaking in. Let's go to an angle that maybe there's a, yeah, let's spin the light around because it's definitely brighter from another angle. Bum, bum, bum. Lock, and I should be able to spin without being able to see it, and that was not the correct axis. Wait, lock, I said. There we go. Give me some light, maybe slightly directional. There we go. Unlock. Oh, I locked it while I was in move. Okay, so that's some basics. Now, I want to get the colors on the top. We could, these are kind of all based off of it, so we could do it in with the shader inside. Why not? So we can get the fall off like that, which is looking pretty good right there. Something I'm actually inclined to do, we're just gonna have some fun with this. Let's get a little bit more of a fall off there. So you can see that we have a bit of a gradient. There's a little bit of a transition from the top to the bottom. So I'm going to save off in here because we are in unexplored areas. Going back up a level, that is now the shader doing all of that work. We could do more things in the shader, I guess. Let's see if it works. What happens if we put this into a layer? Does it still show it? Seems to. And then put a noise in there. Okay, that does indeed show through. So we can keep on working via this. I would like a much larger version of the shader, something like that. Maybe a different noise. So you can't go wrong with Naki for organic things. And then set that to overlay. And yeah, see now what that's doing is it's adding these imperfections on the edge where it can go further down or further up. You can actually exaggerate that a bit by duplicating the layer a second time and overlaying again. So that should give us a like pretty strong variation between the top and bottom. And then let's make another duplicate of that noise, and this time set it to multiply. And here I'm going to add a lot of contrast. So let's pull up the dark and really lower the light. And what do I want? Essentially I want to get like some patchiness here so it doesn't appear everywhere. So we're trying to make a mask to make that purple area. Hard to find the balance, but maybe something like that. Go up, and that's already set to multiply, so it's multiplying on top of the bottom one. If we just say normal, you can see overall where that was applying. So yes, multiply. So that is now a mask that we apply to the top. Although maybe we'll do a different seed on this one, and we could change the scale. 800. Yeah, okay, that's better. And I think I do want to crop some more of these out. Yeah, I don't want it to appear everywhere. Cool. Okay. Back up. It's still set to multiply. So that is only on the top side, and it's randomly around, and we get all this variation on where the layers are striking, and it's just feeding into the vertex map. Excellent. So said vertex map is right there. That could become a mask for whatever. The purple seems pretty dang consistent, so we could just make a solid color. I'm going to select the purple color from the other image. So that's coming through relatively accurately. I do like this red color, but it's got to be brighter. Bit brighter. It's a little purpley, but I don't want to go into pink. I kind of did like that red, though. Maybe it's just darker. Yeah, that's fine. Okay, brighter and desaturated. That's what I think will match better. Okay, cool. Now that sets to normal. It gets a mask, and the mask is based off that shader field. We have to turn on this so it's actually applying, and now we can see that that is masking on top of the rest of it. So working exactly as intended. We could always change the patterning on that, but you know, this is now colored all the way through. It's based on three-dimensional noises, so hopefully when we let this grow, it'll be passing through those clouds of noise. That's the goal here. The technically, I'm gonna make a copy of the spline because actually, let's just look at it in general because we want to reset this to default, which apparently doesn't actually go back to default. Let's go back to black and white, and doesn't seem to come out and update. I'm gonna turn those layers off. Interesting. Distribute knots. What is it not liking? Why is it not showing us a gradient going through? I'm gonna save as another version. Bum bum bum. Okay, cool. I'm gonna go back a frame, see if we can force a refresh. I kind of feel like this should be showing us something, but it's not. I'm dragging that spline in. Interesting. See, that color comes through. This duplicate of that, why isn't it? Yeah, it's not doing anything. Dangerous. Spline, let's bring in a brand new spline. That seems to have done something. Gradients, please. Okay, go figure. Didn't like the other one, but we brought in a new one. It's a little risky, but anyway, what I wanted this to do is be a mask, because the purple stuff doesn't grow near the end. So if that is the mask, this can now come down here into the mask area. So we get that original color. And if we say, hey, we want that to, what do you want to do? Multiply? That doesn't seem quite right. Do we want to screen? Maybe this is backwards. So let's try swapping those. Multiply again. It's being weird again. No, it's there, but the mask. Multiply, please. Why does it seem to fade from the beginning? A little confused by what we're seeing. Shouldn't it be cropping off around here? It feels like it's doing it in the other end, but that's not what that shows when we move it up. Like, definitely not. If we multiply, I can't just show the mask, but we'll move that up. Okay, so if this is what that mask is outputting, we should be able to do that. And yeah, see, that's what I was going for. So according to this, if we multiply those like that, we should be able to feed those into the mask. So we put in the normal, we put in that one, but it's not erasing out the purple. I'm gonna make a folder, put them both inside the folder. Nope, no difference. Curious. Curious and curious. I mean, it's doing something, but it's very odd, whatever it's doing. The spline. I wonder if it's the same spline. Sometimes if something's fed in twice, it like confuses them. Just as an experiment, I'm going to drag a copy of the spline. You see it now has a new name. And if I replace this spline with the new one, I don't see a difference. It's just an experiment, but I don't want to spend too long. I didn't want to spend too long on this one overall, but we have this intriguing vertex map thing kind of working for us. So that's why I was like, okay, we'll spend a little extra time. But now it's being weird. Even that, like, look at what this mask seems to be doing to us now. It's fading from the wrong end. I don't know what to make of that. I could very well be doing something wrong. We're kind of in unexplored territory, but I feel like everything we're doing here makes sense. Or maybe I just realized what's going on. These are based not on color, but on the data, like the actual values. Maybe that's what's going on. So we might not want to do this on the color remap. We might want to do it on the remapping. No remap. And interesting. Okay, so if we change this to a contour, oop, that doesn't go to 0. Okay, so if I, yeah, good. Aha, okay, I was right. I mean, so I was making a mistake there. Cinema was behaving correctly. You can see that where are we? You can see that this folder does not return the color, it returns the data. As a mask, the mask doesn't want color, it wants, the values. So we had to return this as a value, as a 0 to 1, to mask out, is it there or is it not there, because it doesn't care about color. So we just had to do the equivalent remap as we were doing with the color, but just with this gradient. So there we go. That is now working. Makes me feel better about the situation. Okay. So now we've got that going. I think we need to make this overall object shiny. Right now, actually, we don't even have a redshift material. This is just a cinema texture going through, which is pretty good. Redshift does try and convert the cinema materials instantly, but now we will make a redshift material. Drag it on instead, and it needs the same vertex color. So we'll search for vertex, and there is C4D Vertex Map. I want it to have Vertex Map 1. That shall output to the diffuse color. With any luck, there we go. And it's already super shiny. So this does have different areas of shininess. Bringing the reference back in, you can see that it's kind of like those undersides are dull, but everything else is pretty shiny. So if it's white, it's dull. And let's just see if we can get an easy version of that going. I know we masked off the end there, but if we do the second vertex map, which I think is turned on, it is enabled. So we need to copy in, I guess, pretty much this folder. It's going to be easier to copy that entire thing, paste it, and then steal the folder out and delete the others. We don't need it. Keep in mind, we're not going to get feedback there. We might get feedback in the vertex map. And again, you see, I don't understand the way the vertex map works, because now I'm not even seeing the colors represented there. So temporarily, so we can see if it is correct, we will feed this into the vertex map. Actually, yeah, we do have to do that. So drop that in, and let's see. Oh, now those, what's going on here? Turn that off. Oh, I'm most curious. Why is that not returning anything? It's just black right now. Oh, I'm sure there's another logical explanation. Let's think about it. We have a second color tag. It's looking at the points only. It's number 2. We have this shader field, which before was working perfectly fine. I'll just drag it in again from scratch. We already had, yeah, I didn't like that copy paste. I have seen that before, where sometimes copy pastes don't like doing what you'd want them to do. I think we do need the color remap, because this is potentially seeing color now. Maybe. Normal. Turn that off. Yeah, it's not seeing the spline. Try replacing the spline. Nope, doesn't refresh. Drag the spline in fresh. Does see the spline. Yeah, I don't like that. That seems a tad buggy to me. But we'll just put that to the approximate spot. And what do we want? The black is what is going to end up being a particular color. So we want actually the tip of this thing to be white, which is fine. That means we can do max, and now they overlay on top of each other. So now anything that is white should be shiny. I don't know how well that will work, but let's make a duplicate vertex map. That is 2. This original one can go back to being 1. And we can feed this vertex map, which is black and white, and we'll feed that into the reflection roughness. And let's just see what that gives us. So the purple spots, yeah, it's the opposite of what we want. You can see that the purple spots are now dull, and that's shiny. We want the opposite. We could remap it in this, which is potentially a good idea. Actually, it is a good idea. We'll just do a colorizer, which is not something we get to use very often. And we'll go from black to white. And you can see we get that same shininess by inverting that. Now the top has become shiny. And let's clamp in. And we don't actually want the top to be, ultimate shiny, so we can go to more of a gray. The bottom should be... It doesn't feel like it's doing a great job. Let's output this. I'm gonna, I set a shortcut, so if I Alt-G, you can see it shoots over. Okay, this is what we're actually getting from it. Which, yeah, that explains why the shininess wasn't lining up the way I thought it would. Why is it a slow gradient took long? If we turn that off, it's not a small gradient all the way. Is it not colorizing what came below? Like, that's very much not. Oh, that's, okay, look. The source was a value. I'm going to say the source is the color. There we go. Better. Okay, output the main material. Hopefully that works a little bit better. If we make this really white, that should be the roughness, right? If we say white on white, yeah, most of the shininess goes away. Although it is still quite shiny, right? You know what? I don't want to deal with that. Let's just remap it here. So I'll put that into a ramp. Hopefully that works. Let's temporarily output that. So this is actually the values that we're outputting. White is shiny. Let's begin by inverting. Nice, that instantly worked for us. And we can crop that in a decent amount. And crop that in. I want a pretty quick transition. And yeah, that should kind of work for us. And it's pretty extreme. That doesn't seem super white right now. It seems a little bit gray, but whatever. Drag that back into reflection roughness. Output that. Okay, does that seem to work? Yes, now those are shiny and the other one isn't. So mainly what I want to do is now you can say, but the bottom isn't completely not shiny, so we'll give that a little bit of gray. And then this black, it's not supposed to be completely shiny, so we can make that a bit duller. A little bit goes a long way. Come on, show me something. Just want to make sure it's working. Yeah, okay. These middle ground areas are really important. There we go. Yeah, there we get some shine and not the other area. So that's a little extra work, but now you can see the different shininess areas. Save again. Let's take a look at our reference. We got that same mask. Like, this part gets really shiny, but honestly, I want to be wrapping this up soon. So let's just get a bit of a bump going, like some teeny weeny little bumps, not terribly difficult. We should be able to, inside of the redshift material. Let's search for a Maxon noise. Output that directly. And now we can see what that noise is doing. We already had some luck with Naki, so we'll do some more Naki. And that should be kind of small, so 0.2, 0.4. Yeah, 0.4 is fine. Make a bump. Bump. Drag that into the bump. Feed that in as the input texture. Output that as the overall bump. Output that as the material. And there we go. Well, not too bad. Yeah, all that little texture going around. Now, I mean, we could definitely use a mat. You know, we've got this vertex map, which could be used as a mask. So we could say, okay, certain parts are bumpy, certain parts are not bumpy. I think that the shiny part can be shinier because I forgot that the bump is going to introduce a lot of, you know, imperfection on it as well. But you can see how you can layer up the masks and whatnot. Okay, so let's just make... I mean, there's not much more to do. We could, you know, there's a lot we could change. This is all still live, so radius-wise, let's just see what happens. I just saved because a little bit dangerous again, but let's go back to the original volume builder. And because the stuff is based off a spline, I feel like even if these start intersecting, I'm not going to worry about the intersecting, but let's make it like way bigger. That didn't refresh great on the end, but it might refresh if we up. Yeah, okay, it just needed a frame to refresh. And then the... let's see. Drag that. Let's have it go kind of pointy there. And let's pull way back. We need the contrast on the bulb. Should be tighter. Okay, that starts looking a little wonky, but definitely a little more along the lines of what I'm looking for. Definitely has an intestine vibe. Okay, better. Let's get this curve to taper a little bit more immediately. And then, yeah, the overall shape is like slowly shrinking down, but I like how like our vertex map is being pretty robust. Like it's working pretty well. Let's get the stem to be pretty thick, but then the rest of it can fade down quite a bit. Okay, yeah, that's fine and a little bit funky. Let's see. Anything else I want to do? Let's change the deformation a bit. That's Perlin noise. Let's set that to, well, let's try Luca. Why not? Let's go nuts. So that's going to break it apart in more specific ways, sharper ways, but that usually means I make it larger. But yeah, I kind of like these little bumps and knots a little bit more. We are also creating this color vertex map. Potentially we could feed that in and have like, certain areas like the purple ones pop out more. We could keep going and going and going on here, obviously, but the main point was, could we get some texturized colors going and growth? So let's set this up for a render. Output, and let's go 1920 by 1080. Lock, divide by 2. I already set the sampling down, or to 1, which is quite low. We'll do 0.5. And all frames, redshift, save, save that to my episode 27 render folder. I'll make a new folder inside, call it mushroom 1A, 1A mushroom. Save. Okay, that's all saved. Turn off multipass, blah, 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 blah. Okay, cool. Not much else going on. We could obviously texture up the ground and whatnot, but that is just not relevant to what we're doing, so let's see what we can get. And yeah, this should whip through this pretty quick. Pretty simple setup. We got this big black spot on the front. That seems not great. I'm not sure what... Yeah, it disappeared. I'll have to think about that. We have to give it a few frames, but what we really want to do is feel like this is passing through the texture, which it definitely feels like it is, but we got some somewhat crazy things happening. Some of those frames look a little bit weird, but we are layering quite a few things. We'll just have to see after it goes a few more frames. Let me think. Oh, that is... Oh, yeah. Oh, geez. Okay, that makes sense why it's happening. Remember I said that the bulge was happening because the entire thing is passing through, so we get this giant, like the bulbous end is super inflated as it grows, and that is not what we want. We kind of want it already statically there as the rest of it erases off from it. I'm trying to think of how I would get around that, because that's somewhat breaking the illusion. Ooh, the noise is very staticky. That might make sense based on our low poly count. The external noises seem fine. The internal ones are not. Let's make sure that these didn't have... Yeah, there's no animation speed on them. But those seem to be picking out different random points as it travels through, and it's suddenly activating. And with the heavy emphasis on the masks getting remapped, I guess that probably makes sense. Well, that's the danger of doing something kind of crazy and experimental like this. Yeah, because that's passing through the clouds of noise. Okay, so well, here's the point: is we spent a lot of time doing this with the cinema noises, but we probably should have done all of this inside of Redshift. The only thing we really needed was that overall gradient to apply the color. That's what we really needed. Okay, interesting. It felt like there's a couple frames there that, no, I guess it just... Oh, that's weird. Kind of felt like there's a couple frames where it wasn't moving. Boop, bum, bum. We need eyes on it. Why does it say redshift material not valid? I didn't catch that, but I don't know. This all like procedural stuff. So yeah, two major things we kind of would need to fix. And the crazy thing is you can see that the bump is actually I was kind of throwing out there that I thought that these, is there, it's possible that this correction deformer is a frame behind. That would be not great. If the correction deformer is a frame behind, then the poly count would always be updating and changing, and that would account for this. And there's no way to stop that from happening. I don't think. There would be no way to stop it from doing what it's currently doing. And that single frame of lag could explain why sometimes we're getting the black spot, where something maybe is getting mapped onto the end. I'm just trying to think through the logic of it. The gradient feels pretty static, like the yellow right there. Like that's doing its job properly. I don't understand the black spot, but I feel like I got some solid theories on why the purple is behaving the way that it is. It's possible that the volume mesher version of it would be more stable. I am curious. That'd be really easy to set up, so we can do that. Yeah, that's, I mean, this is not, none of that's helping, but the noise is super stable, so we could rebuild it using the noise. Okay, two things I'd love to test. Let's rebake this sucker. We don't need that to calculate. So bake as alembic, please. Keep in mind it should be properly baking because it starts out with some geometry already. And now, with that baked out as alembic, we can transfer the correction and shader onto that. It should just all automatically update. And don't do anything with the original. And it's already got the material applied. So reactivate our renderer and let's see if it, yeah, that is properly colorized. Now I don't expect it to be stable necessarily. Well, the hope is that it is stable. Now we're still going to get the giant bulge leading on the edge, but let's see if the purple stops being staticky. And this is probably because if it's not staticky, it's because the volume builder is calculating like the inputs. There could be an order of operations thing happening, but once it's baked out, that order of operations might not be an issue anymore. It's hard to tell. It seems more stable, but it's hard to tell. It's still morphing as it goes, but I'm watching. Oh, that one doesn't seem so great, but it could be that this material, we just need to see if it's more stable. We're only going to be able to tell once we play, but like as we go frame to frame, there seems to be a better coherence, but maybe not. It does seem smoother. The other one seems a little bit uglier. Go figure. Okay, two things. Yes, it's more stable. I feel like the mask is good, but because the bulge is happening, yeah, that fixed one problem. It's not fixing the other, because that does look better. Man, I'd love to. Dean, I don't think texture. Well, first of all, I've never been clear on exactly what texture does, but volume meshers don't have like UVs. Like this volume doesn't have any kind of usable UV, so we kind of have to be in world space, and we want to be passing through the cloud of noise. Like that's the entire point. But because we are constantly changing thickness on the overall shape, that's not great. The black spot is still showing up here. Like I'm seeing so much potential for this, but it needs more R&D to fully work, and I'm still not sure that the baking to. Let's do one final test. Essentially, we're doing all that stuff with the mask. Essentially, we have to, anything that's using this mask, and that, I guess the mask is even implemented into the purple, so we have to kill that, all of that. So now we're just back to this basic color, and we have to drive all of that internally. Not necessarily the most difficult thing, but let's just spend a second and do that. So there's our baseline. Now we're going to need several noises. So make another max on noise, output that. We need it to be pretty large, so let's say 2, 5. Okay, 5 seems okay. That gets fed into a ramp. Nice, and that goes all the way to black and white because we're making a mask. And already, you know, so you look at all the detail we get because it's not a vertex map anymore. And I want these to be pretty close. Like a little transition is nice, but I want them like heavy contrast. Now we need to get that state. So search for state, utility, state. That's the normal direction. Ray direction. Ray origin, ray position, ray tangent. It could be any of those. Like I said, I just don't know. Let's take a splitter, and splitter is going to take X, Y, and Z and split them out. So let's output just red. I'm thinking that's not the one we want. Let's try green. Okay, nope. I guess it could just be normal direction. Ooh, okay, yeah, I think it is just normal direction. So it is green. Yeah, that's pretty much working perfectly. Okay, so it was the normal direction from green. So we figured that out quicker than I thought we would. That can get gradient mapped. And we can get the exact fall off exactly where we want it. Maybe. It's not remapping very well. Oh, dang it. I do that all the time. I made a copy of this one, but I was modifying the wrong one. So let's do a little switcheroo. Ta-da. Okay, I was like, why isn't it remapping? Now we can see it updating. Okay, now we can get the top end of the flower. And now, so now we got those components. So then we make a layer, color layer. Let's take that, several ways we could do this. Let's set that to the base layer, output that. Then output this as layer 1. Multiply, or possibly darken. Darken, yeah, so now it just puts it at the top. So let's just say that those are the top purple layers. And that gives us that baseline, which means this could become a mask for something else. We'll make a duplicate of this. We get our main, that's the main color. And then we're going to get a purple color. We'll just make it up. Dark. Okay, kind of like a burgundy. Set that to normal. And then we need the mask. So there's mask 1. Mask 1 is based on what we just made. Output that. And yeah, perfect. I guessed correctly. So you can see we get the base color gray, and then we get the purple on top. We can always modify these, but I'm trying to do it quickly. So if we wanted, we could extend the opposite direction. Pull that down so we can get a little bit more. Sharpen it up a bit. Yeah. So you can see the type of thing we can modify and change. It would be, you know, you saw how I did several layers of overlay before. Like we could totally do that type of thing, but we'll skip it for now. That is now the color channel. And then we have our reflection. This is now giving us the mask for the reflection. We didn't get the tip. I'm just not going to worry about that. Let's feed that out and remap. And here's, yeah, so you can see this is where the reflection should happen. It's already seemingly remapping it properly. So let's let that go. And yeah, so you can see that's shinier there and less here. So that's kind of the quick version of this. What's cool about building stuff this way is it's really, really quick to be like, okay, that should be bigger. So we'll double the scale. And now, you know, now we get a larger pattern. It just looks a little bit better. And some different overlays and mapping things and combining them. A lot of potential for controlling things. Now, these noises based on this mesh should essentially be, yeah, well, they're based on the object, but I think they'll be passing through world noise given the lack of UVs. So let's see if that is more stable. I expect it to still be kind of crazy because, once again, we're not growing it in the proper way, which is pretty important. But let's see what that gives us. Like I said, I expect these to change, but they should be more morphing as they push through the cloud of noise instead of popping. So like if you look at any particular spot like this one, that seems pretty stable. So I think this is already better. Well, and the one thing that we really needed, which we are getting from the correction, is a gradient mapped along the overall shape. That's what we've been lacking forever. And if this gives us that, that's awesome. Now, how would I want to move on. First of all, everybody, if you want, start posting another question, because I don't want to stop this one soon. Like, I want to tackle several questions. We already spent most of the show on this singular question. But anytime that we can learn something new, like this correction deformer trick, which was a shot in the dark, but it seemed to be working, like, I feel like it's, well worth our time. This rig also could probably be moved back to the parametric one and not the baked one. But yeah, definitely stable now along those lines. I would probably make the final shape and then erase it out with a secondary line. There is some risks associated with that where a shape might pop in. I'll continue rendering that and show you what I mean perhaps. Currently, this shape is generated. Oh yeah, we do have to turn that off and we'll make this one. So this shape is currently generated because of a animated Mo spline. I'm going to say, yeah, that's all well and good, but let's actually base it on an instance of the original spline and not the Mo spline. So now you see we get the exact same shape, but it's not animated anymore. That's not going anywhere. But now we do have a Mo spline, and that one is animated. So then what I'm thinking is inside the volume builder, we've got that initial spline. We could say, yes, cool. Let's feed in another one. And the secondary spline, oh yeah, dang it, it's still, put that into a connect and put that in. Go away, Mo spline. Okay, so we get the secondary one, and now we get the parameters. So now we need to make that larger than the original. That's 65, so this one will be 75. So now you see we get this giant tube, and that one should be animating. So you can see as I move this back, do you see how that, we got that leading edge that erases out? So then I'll say only where those intersect does it show up. So now you see we get this final shape, and it's erasing out as it goes. So that's the difference between it. And yeah, see, that's what I was worried about is if we do, because I had to make it larger, it's where it's overlapping, and you can end up with those floaters. But, and then, yeah, these curves and whatnot, we'd have to be more careful. This is the quick and easy way of doing it. But yeah, now we do actually have something that's erasing out the mesh more in the way we wanted it to, so we can see these things appear as it goes. Let's see, what are things I might want to do? Well, that probably only needs to be like 66, so it's a little more accurate. It doesn't need to be super inflated based on the other one, just slightly bigger. And then that, that final mesh, I guess we are displacing it after the fact, so this is actually doing a lot of displacing. It might be kind of nice if that goes in and out. So under remapping, if we say, okay, that should go minimum minus 100, then now you see it actually pushes in and out. So that can be kind of nice. Because we're not subdividing after the fact, I don't like these extra spiky bits. So let's go to another Naki. Yeah, just a little bit more lumpy. Yeah, good enough. Okay, let's see how stable this other render has been being. Save this as another version. Bump, bump, bump. And go. Yeah, okay, see, already you see how those are stable. And they might more slowly as it passes through the noise. But that should look a lot better in our new version, which should just work. Let's move our correction deformer after everything else in the hierarchy. I just saved it, so reactivate. Should be no danger there. The material should update. Everything should be clean. And let's try that. Output, yeah, that's outputting the final material. We could probably organize this a little bit more. But, bump, 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 bump. Let's double the bump size. Okay, cool. So, let's send this out. I think everything we just did makes sense. Go. So it shouldn't be, there shouldn't be this inflated leading edge. And that's one of the big keys to what we're seeing. Let's go back to the reference. And going back, yeah, see how like the rest of it's not changing? It's just kind of like this leading edge is kind of growing out from that center point. That is the hope with what we're doing here, where the leading edge is changing. And potentially we could put like a deformer or something on the very tip of it. So it's like, oh, maybe the very edge kind of has this little implied bulge, or there could be a little bit of change happening throughout the entire thing, but very mildly. But the point of this effect is supposed to be that we have a static overall shape that can change color, get mapped different ways. Essentially, we have textured something that is parametric, but with vertex maps. That was the goal, and I do think that we are at a place that works. But who knows? There could be some limitations. Trey's got a question. Oh yeah, somebody had a question in YouTube. I would like to see that. Cleon, are you still around? Random question. How would you go about creating a dynamic rope connected between two dynamic objects? That is an excellent question. If you're still here, I'll try and tackle a quick version of that. Yeah, I'm trying to think of... There's several different ways you could do it. The way I would do it would be the most robust, but it's also the most involved. Let's see how this is going. Yeah, it pops a little quick, and we definitely want to animate this a lot slower. But it's super stable. It's almost like too stable. But I do like the texture. Like, it's the type of thing, this type of growth is something we've never really gotten to do before. And I do like this type of growth. Like, whenever you see this type of blobby growth, it always ends up being a solid color. Like, it's like a slime color or water or a solid colored plastic. And now it's like, oh, now we've made a version that isn't that. Somebody said it'd be good to put some subsurface on there, and I do agree. There's a little bit of blinking there. I'm not sure if that's GI blinking. I hope it is. Yeah, there's some blinking down there too. So it might just be the low render quality we set it to. Oh, we're getting there. Wonder what would be the cleanest way to get the growth happening. I can't think of any like super duper clean way. You could manually do it, and if you get these complicated areas, you could do some extra things where maybe you make a sphere and you say, okay, but you keep existing until I tell you not to, type of thing. So you could do some manual versions. We still get the black leading edge a bit, and I wonder if that is still a frame of lag from the vertex map. I'm not entirely sure. But yeah, as we lead into here, oh yeah, the black spot. And it's very occasional. That is a problem. We'd have to figure that out, and I won't spend any more time on that specifically today. But this is, yeah, we'd want to see the static, and really we'd want this whole thing growing at like 1/10 the speed, so we could really see that slow transition in. Good chance we'd want to subdivide this overall more. I left it low, obviously, because we're in a live stream. At least it's going quick. Yeah, see, okay, as we get to the slower point, because we had the ramp down, do you see how it's growing on the edge? That's exactly the effect I want it to get to here. Just right there. So you see, yeah, it's growing, and it's passing through the noise, but when it settles down, it's like, well, that's what the noise is in that particular spot. It just bakes it in. And yeah, just the front end is growing. But look at all this detail we get from texturing. With a little bit more time and love on these textures, like we could get something really nice. The even the cheap version of it, well, I'd have to stop the render, but I do like putting on some translucency, which is a good quick fake for subsurface scattering. But I tend to like the look of that quite a bit. We gotta, well, I would like to explore this more in the future and figure out what's going on with this bleeding edge where you get the black blips, because that is messing up the effect. But the ability that this is going yellow while parametric, like, this is something special. Very cool. It's all worth it for that bit right there. I'm not sure that Cleon is still around, but let's try and do that dynamic chain connection. This is pretty much done rendering. It's not going to change much from here. Yeah, it's pretty much done. Very cool, though. Something to explore. Something to explore. Save. New. So the question was making a rope in between two dynamic objects. Now, I'm not even sure that this will work, but a very, very, very basic version of this might be, maybe it's not even as basic as I think it would be for the basic version, but making a SSAO so we can see it collide with the ground, and adding a soft body. We should be able to get these cubes falling. Okay, two dynamic objects and they hit the ground. Let's just move that up in the air a bit. Bonk, bonk. Okay, so connecting between them. Well, there's different layers. The super easy one, I'm not even sure this works, but we can do a tracer and it'll create a straight line between them, which is pretty cool. Just put those in and say connect elements, connect objects, connect elements. That's weird. It's not drawing the line between them. Don't trace the vertices. It could be because they're dynamic. Yeah, I thought maybe that would happen because it's dynamic. Yeah, okay. Well, you have to hit play and then it does show up. But you can see you can get a line just drawn between them, which is fine. That's cute. I wonder if... No, that doesn't make any sense. But anyway, that gives us a... that's a direct connection between them. That's one thing. And I think it would render properly even if it's a frame behind here. You can see as I go frame forward, it lags. But then if I mouse over it, it fixes. Typically, a good rule of thumb is if you mouse over the viewport and it pops in the properly, then it's going to render correctly. So I shall make that editable so that we can, and then T for scale to get the points out and subdivide. So let's say subdivide US. So now we got a couple of quick subdivisions. And the next thing I would do is a hair simulation. So you can say hair spline dynamics, and hair spline dynamics are pretty cool. If we say select all, shrink, invert selection, that'll select the two endpoints. Set, and those are now fixed points, which means they won't move, and you see the dynamics happen between them. But now that those don't move, we can say, yeah, but you should now be stuck in a particular place. Now let's see if we can get that working. I haven't done this in a long time. I was wondering, do we have to do it with Expresso? Is there a way to do it with a constraint object? Rigging, constraint. Yeah, I think we might have to do it with Expresso, which is unfortunate because it's so much effort. Clamp. Yeah, this is everything. Target, clamp. RBLX says there's a hair constraint. Is that a thing? Oh, there is a hair constraint. Okay. The object influence map. Bump. Let's select, that's the top one. So I'll select that point and say set. Hey, look at that. Cool, I didn't know there was a hair constraint. Or maybe once upon a time I did, but I didn't remember. Okay, so thank you, RBLX. And then let's try it again. Select this one and say that one links to cube 2, set. And yeah, those are actually working pretty well. So there is now a, oop, that's maybe not working so well. Oh yeah, okay, you have to rewind a few times. That maybe will render properly, I'm not sure. It's still coming after, but those are dynamic objects. Maybe baking the dynamics first. But remember, the dynamics haven't been like rewinding properly in the new version. So that could be at play here. But rewinding all the way, you can see how those connect. So that is the way number 2 I was saying. So let's save that. Now, the way that you're actually going to get, here's the thing. That line going between them is like, yeah, that's a line in between them, but there's no influence on the cubes. So you guys probably already know where I'm going. But my way of doing this, of course, would be go full dynamics, because when you go full dynamics, you can have absolute control over everything that's happening. So setting that to whatever distance, we can now do a series of connections. So let's keep it simple. Let's say 100, and I'm not even gonna worry about these cubes. Let's just make the chain first. So that is a dynamic cube, and I'll make the next one, move it over exactly 100 units. I said 100, please. And it needs a connection. So simulate connector. And that gets moved in between the two, which would be moving it over 50. Say connect 2 to 3. And I would like that to be a, let's just say a ragdoll, ball and socket. So it's just like a total crazy connection. Total, yeah, make it larger. You can see how it's connecting from one to the other. So that just enables that to wiggle in every direction. So we don't really see much, but let's make the next duplicate of it, which, let's see, the first one's always clunky to do. In fact, I'll delete cube 3 and move those over an extra 100 units. So now that will connect 2 to 4, and now we have 4 connects to 5. So then we can take those. I didn't set it up in the cleanest way, but we can duplicate those, copy paste, and we'll replace that one again. And oopsie, scoot them over. Yeah, we're losing one every time. We'll still get to our doubling point, but that's my bad. 4 to 7, that should already be connected. 7 to 6, and now 6 doesn't connect to anything. Oh no, it connects to 3, but 3 is the dead end now. Select them all again, copy paste, move it just above 3. Select all the new ones, which should be, yeah, 11 and 5. This will be the last one I make. So now we'll scoot that over until you see the separation. So you can see we can double this. As manual as this is, we only ever have to fix one connection per duplication. Boink. So if I did that correctly, and who knows if I did, we should be able to hit play, and hopefully they don't explode. They didn't, and you can see they all fall and just hit the ground. You know what, this will look better if we duplicate one last time, so fine. We'll do that. Scoot these to one before. 19 is the good one. Delete 5. 19. Scoot over. Boom. Okay. That is our last doubling. Cool. So now we get a significant length of chain. So then we can just make a final connection between our newly made chain. And I know there's a script on Cineversity to do some of the basics here, in case anybody says that. Okay, let's move that to wherever. I'm not even perfectly in the location, but let's move that over here. Okay, so now, and I would even take it, that's the first cube. Let's move this, or let's call these, I don't know, I'll say ends. Okay, so, and let's colorize them just a bit on. Okay, so we can see them a little bit better. So there's now a new connector in end. Let's move that to visually approximately somewhere between the end and then cube 2. And then duplicate this end, well, not duplicate, but move this end all the way to the end. Make another connection as a child of that one. Move that to approximately the correct location. That'll connect to the end and then the previous one, which is cube 3. So that should be interconnecting all of them. So they're all dynamic objects, and you now see it fall to the ground. Now it doesn't look like much. Ooh, what's that connection doing? Dang it. Okay, I moved the wrong... I moved those to the opposite sides. My bad, so let me fix it. That is here, so that should connect to cube 2. Nope. Where's cube? That's cube 2. That's this end. Oh, this one's now in the wrong location. Let me scoot that there. There we go. And now this one, there's the end, and here's that end, and here's that connector. Okay. All good, all good. 3. Okay, so those should be now connected correctly. So now you see that falls. It doesn't look like much right now, but they are now connected by a fully dynamic chain. So probably a good idea to grab all those, Alt-G, put them into a single null. So now we've got that rig. I shall save this as the next version. Okay, so pulling that rig up into the air, let's make something for it to collide with. Make that into a collider body by stealing the one from the floor. Hopefully that works. Hit play. And now we have a fully dynamic rope setup, but these now affect all of the geometry. So by building it kind of for real, like an actual series of connections, we now get a very robust chain. This chain can have a lot of influence over what goes on. Right now, these chains, the boxes are smaller. These are like, whatever, 400 by 400, maybe 200 by 200, and these are only 100. So they weigh like 1/8 of what these larger ones do. But they still have that weight. But there's so many things we can tweak on it. If we were to select those little boxes and say, you know what, like you're way lighter. So just look at the way this is swinging. Bunk. So just observe that. But now let's say, okay, those ropes are very light now. So we'll say a custom density of 0.1. So they now weigh only 10% of what they used to. So now when we swing, let's see if it looks any different. Yeah, you see how those ropes just gave away a lot because these boxes are very dominant in the simulation now. And now, just for fun, let's do the opposite. Let's make them back to their original weight and then make them 10 times heavier. So these ropes now weigh more than those individual boxes on the end. So those boxes, do you see how those boxes are now subservient to what the chain wants to do more so? You see, yeah, the rope is being yanked down less because they now weigh more. So it's all about the relative relationship to each other. Now we do have a lot of control. Let's put that back to default. We have a lot of control. We can select all of these cubes. I shall collapse this, re-extend it, select all the cubes, and let's shrink these on not X. So we'll say 11Y, 11Z, and now we've kind of got this thin one, but that just makes it look a little bit more rope-like, and dynamically speaking, that should feel more like a rope. But, well, okay, now you see that they're so thin. How did that happen? How did those... What? How did those deform? These aren't soft bodies, are they? They are soft bodies. What? When did that happen? I must have misclicked somewhere. Off. Okay, don't be soft body. I can't believe those were working as well as they were if those were soft body. Okay, now anyway, the point being is you see how that breaks through? That's again because these are, well, first of all, our steps per frame and how thin they are. They're just so light, and these other ones are so heavy that they're just getting bullied around and they get yanked right through because they have so little influence over the scene. So I don't know for sure, but by just going to custom density and saying you're 10 times heavier, let's see if it's any different. And yeah, look, see, just by changing the density, these are like, no, we have more influence. You can't yank on us as hard as you were. And just by changing that, you see how this rope is now interlinking more properly, and we get these are able to swing a bit. I'll spin this tube around just a hair. Make the radius larger, make this longer, just so that there's a bit of an angle to it, so that those might swing past each other. Or get a little bit of rotation going. But yeah, so you get this kind of linkage. The resolution is the number of chains or how small the chains are, and you can interlink them that way, which is really nice. Now, those are dynamic objects, but we could turn that into a visual rope by doing that same trick we did with the tracer. I'll select all of our cubes. This isn't actually the best way to do it, but it'll be good enough. Make a tracer, and because I had those selected, the tracer automatically created those. If I say, I think connect all objects, but don't look at the vertex, and let's go a frame forward, then there should hopefully be a single line going from the center of each cube. And like we wouldn't actually want from the center, we'd want them from the connection points. And there's ways to do that, but let's just not worry about it. Anyway, that's now a spline. A spline, of course, can be swept. feeding that into a, put an end side into the sweep and put a couple of segments there. And that should be about the size of the dynamic cubes. And give that a color. So now we get the rope in between, and that will be a frame behind, but again, that will look correct when you actually run it. Let's hide the in-between rope bit, and now you can see we get a rope. You know, now what looks like a rope connecting between them. Something that's cool about the tracer is you can see how chunky that looks, but the tracer is a live spline, so we can do something like set that to be a B-spline. And if we give it some subdivisions, let's say a uniform subdivision, we don't even need too much, even like 2, you can see how it's rounded that out. So those get nice and rounded. And yep, that's working fine. And then, you know, even based on the simulation, we probably just want to thicken this rope up a bit. So let's set that to 15, 15. And I could probably start getting to the point where it doesn't look like it's sneaking through the pipe. Well, not as much. Let's go 25, 25. Yep. And what's cool about, yeah, there, so that just looks a little bit better. And, you know, there, you have all the control you want dynamics-wise of changing this. Let's just play with this a bit. Let's grab this end, and we'll set that end to be a lot heavier. Let's make it 5 times as heavy. Mass, custom, density, 5 times heavier than it currently is. So it won't look too different in the beginning, but then that's probably going to yank the other one. Oh, let's pull, get rid of the floor. We don't even need it. So that's going to be way heavier and yank the other one up, and okay, not quite enough to, well, no, there it goes. Like, it's enough to like yank it over just by changing that weight. But then you could imagine, let's grab all of the rope segments, and I don't know if this will work or not, but let's go and say, okay, you got tons of friction, so that rope doesn't want to slide as easily over the tube. So let's see if the rope friction helps. Now it's going to be swinging back and forth, but it's still pulling. Yeah, see, that friction is now enough that it's not able to yank it over. So we now have all these different dynamic systems, well, slowly pulling over, but clearly the friction is helping prevent it from going over quickly. The point being is we now have all of these tools to make these behave exactly how we want to. And they are fully dynamic systems. So, you know, we get, you know, total control over them to the point where, you know, copy that entire rig, move it up. Oh. Actually, oh, the, I suppose we should put the visual rope inside the rig. Copy and paste the entire rig, pull it up, R for rotate, and we can make a copy of it. And, you know, these two rope, what's great about this system is that these ropes will interact with each other. You can see how this one won't pass through the other one. And, you know, if we set this up properly, they could even tangle up with each other. And I mean, we are just using cubes right now, so it runs pretty quickly. But letting these all go. Yeah, so those ropes, given enough steps per frame, should not even pass through each other. So yeah, it's kind of like the best of all worlds. It just takes more time to set up, but now that we've got it, these are actual ropes having actual properties on it. Everything is interacting with everything. So that's always the way I end up going with it. But yeah, keep in mind the relative density. Yeah, look at that one catch because it wrapped around a bit. So yeah, that kind of covers that. That's definitely the way I would go about making a rope. Now that's a spline, you could do whatever you want. Put the rope material on there, make a rail spline to give it a particular direction. You could even make it that these ropes, right now we just did that full on connector that is set to ball and socket. But if you set that to a ragdoll, you could say, hey, you're only allowed to rotate, say, 30 degrees. So it can never make that sharp of a turn. If you make, you know, half these, instead of being 100, it could be 50. And now you would double the resolution of the rope. Yeah, so it just goes on and on and on. You can just turn into whatever you want. You can even, you know, potentially you could make it so that the, you know, the rope is fatter over here and thinner over here. You could put a, actually, I wonder if we could here. No, you can't break, and it wouldn't rip here, but just to show you the, it won't work with the rope, but let's make, or it won't work with a spline, rather. We'd have to make 2 different tracers. But just look at these connections. Here's something that's kind of fun, is if I select this connector, if we hit play, the whole thing's going to fall. It's going to be dynamic. And at any given moment, I can be like, turn off. And now, look, we broke that. And now we have a rope that we can tear by animating it. And look, all this friction is stopping that even from easily sliding. But yeah, that will slide off, and we broke the rope at that given moment. So you would want to make 2 tracers, one tracer that connected from here to that point, and one from that to that point, and then potentially figure out some sort of in-between, or maybe have it turn on and off in a particular frame so you get that sudden break happening. But there's a lot of potential for doing whatever you want now. You've built it as a rig, not just letting Cinema figure it out for you. Okay. We're almost at the end, but I'd love to squeeze in one more question. RBLX is saying, yeah, whatever you try to make a necklace with a spline and spline dynamics, or even this method, they always end up falling through the geometry, and that is not surprising. That's a fine follow-up actually to this question. So let me see if we can do that. So let me track down an animated character I was working with, because it's a baked down mesh. Bum bum bum. And where is it? Demos. We do have the T-Rex. That'd be kind of fun. Okay, let's try doing the T-Rex. Okay, so I've got this animated T-Rex, and we should be able to turn him into a dynamic thing to collide with. That's already been baked down. So he's an entire mesh. And it was baked as a limbic, but you see it's a static mesh with an alembic tag, which is enabling him still to animate. So this was a demo for the mesh to spline from Rocket Lasso, but let us copy our dynamic rope rig into this T-Rex file. Excellent. All right. The scales are a little out of whack, but not too bad. And let's just shrink it down. So let's see if we can see the problem almost right away. So I guess we'll save this immediately. Bum, 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 bum. Rope ring on a mesh. Okay, on that we will add a collider body, but we'll tell it that it is a collider body that is a moving mesh. So here's the problem. Let me hit play. And now you're going to see that, you see, okay, this is probably the problem you're running into. And that's why I thought this would be a good example. You see how it kind of looked like it's reacting. It is reacting a bit, but then it almost immediately it starts falling through the T-Rex. And we've talked about this concept a bit, not in a while, but this concept when it comes to particles, where if you shoot a particle really fast, so if we have, we have a giant wall. If we were shooting a particle really fast, here's our bullet. If you were firing dynamics or a particle really fast and it's going to go hit this wall, the dynamics needs to know that it collided with the object. So if the bullet is here one frame and it's here the next frame, and then the next frame it's here, it doesn't necessarily know that it collided with the wall because it went so quickly. So now imagine that in addition to your bullet moving, or your particle, and in this case it would be these dynamic objects or even a soft body, in addition to that moving, imagine that the wall itself is also moving around and twisting, and potentially, given the type of model it is, it could just be teleporting. So as far as it's concerned, it's like this wall is teleporting from here to here, or to here to here. And even if this bullet was not moving and it's just hanging out near this wall, if suddenly this wall jumps up a decent amount, then it's like, well, I didn't collide with something, I'm just over there. So in this particular case, we've got this rope. And then if that rope falls down and it's touching the back of the T-Rex, which it does collide with it, but the T-Rex you saw was moving up in that particular frame, and now it moves up again, and suddenly like individual polygons are passing through our dynamic object, and it doesn't know it's colliding with it. That's the problem. Now, I mean, a basic solution, but it's not a great one because you'll still have a problem. You'll still have problems, but you can go to steps per frame. And if we crank this up to like 5 times the amount, then it's checking 5 times as often. It's still running. And now you can see immediately by doing that, it did a better job. You see how it kind of like hopped up, but it hopped up because it's kind of passing through this very complicated mesh, and it just doesn't know If it's above, once it starts passing through a polygon, it doesn't know which way is up. It's like, well, I'm being hit from all directions. Do I push down? Do I push up? Where do I go? It doesn't know. So it is a lot better if you're in this type of circumstance to lower this back down, to start putting in some low poly proxies of solid geometry. Now, well, what I wanted to do, something that'd be relatively clean, but I can't because of the way this T-Rex is built, was I was going to, like in his skeleton, which we don't have here, would be to put a sphere right where his body is and say like, oh, there's now a sphere hanging out right here, and then make another sphere, copy paste, and then put it where the neck is. And essentially, you know, as much as you need to do something like that. And now you can see we would have two spheres there, and it would be really hard. Like, spheres are really mechanically accurate. So we can't do that because it's a moving mesh. But what we could do is, I don't want to make too many spheres, so let's make a selection tag on our T-Rex. Oh, it's almost already selected. Anyway, a loop selection right there, and right, oh, that one doesn't want to select too well, so I'm just going to grow my selection. So you can see I've got that selection. We could even go one larger, maybe deselect that one. If we want to run a little bit quicker, I can deselect that ring UF and just have those in the back selected. So you can see I've got all those polygons selected, and that's pretty much where it's going to be colliding. So create, select, store selection, just name it 1. Okay, cloner, that gets the sphere. It is going to clone onto an object. What's it cloning onto? The body of the T-Rex. It wants to clone onto polygon centers, which is going to be a lot, but we can limit it to that selection, which is not a lot. So you can now see I've limited it. T for scale, and scale down these spheres. And now you can see I've got a whole cluster of spheres, each hanging out on one of the polygons. There is a possibility you could scale based on the polygon. There's other options too, actually. Does this work? If we say scale onto the edge, then now you kind of get this alternating pattern, which might fill it out better. It is making more. I guess it's double the amount of spheres. It's not 4 times the amount because they're shared edges. So, but then we could say scale on edge. That doesn't scale in all dimensions. But anyway, you can now see that we're making more, and it's actually a cleaner pattern. So potentially, you know, we can scale this down. It doesn't need to be like super tiny, but we can do that. And in the cloner, we could even say, let's offset on Z and sink those into the body a little bit. So it's just barely poking out a bit. So if we say, okay, spheres, like, okay, T-Rex, you're not dynamic anymore at all. And now on these spheres, I'm gonna say, okay, simulation collider body, yes. Your shape is now not a big complicated shape. You are now just an ellipsoid. So it's going to be calculating that really accurately, and it's calculating it as a sphere, essentially. It doesn't even need as many polygons. We can lower that down. That's not really a variable. So now we've got a series of spheres cloned onto a particular spot. And if we rewind, and let's see what happens if we run the, what's going on here? Why is the T-Rex not animating anymore? I turned those off. Oh dear. It's because I put the selection tag on? That'd be weird. What did I do to break the T-Rex? I did something. It was dynamic and it's not dynamic anymore. I'm not sure what I did to break the T-Rex. Just to keep things moving, I'm going to try and copy him back in again. Let's undo, get that tag back, paste. Do we have a stopping T-Rex again? Yes. Copy that selection tag back to this new T-Rex so we get the selection tag. Is it still running? Yes. Now, save, clone onto, let's see if this works. I'm just not sure at what point it broke the T-Rex. I'll say clone onto the body. The tag's already fed in. Frame forward, and he's still moving. So go figure. I'm not sure what broke. I'll move it after the T-Rex so it's in the proper order. So now we got a series of spheres on the back of the T-Rex. So I don't know how well this worked, but let's hit play. And well, okay, it's not, well, keep in mind that the resolution of this rope is more accurate than the rest, but let's unhide all of those and we'll turn off the rope. So keep in mind, that's what we're actually seeing is this series of cubes interconnected. So now those cubes really don't want to pass through those spheres. Those spheres are very mathematically accurate. Polygons are not. In fact, you can see that that is perfectly wrapping around the T-Rex. It's just passing through the parts that we didn't protect. So you can see that starts escaping, and then we run out of time. So let's go to 777. I think it loops. It might not actually. No, he's not. It doesn't. It's not a looping animation. But you can see that that doesn't. It's not able to escape through that part. So let's push this a little bit further because it's just based on a selection tag. So save because it's working, double click, and let's just manually paint in a couple of extra polygons on both sides. And then just update our selection tag, update, and then you can see a bunch more spheres got made. And drop. And now it's not able to pass through that either because we've now done this kind of spherical proxy. And like I said, when something passes through a polygon, it doesn't know which way is up. But if something is trying to intersect with a mathematically perfect sphere, it knows which way is up. So that's where you can get this working really clean. These weights on the ends are still 10 times heavier on one side. So we'll put that back to world so it's not yanking on one side. And you now see that those are very nicely sticking on the T-Rex. There are potentially ways you could scale these down appropriately, but for the most part, you just need to shrink them into the body. I kind of left them poking up above just the hair so we could see them, but you could definitely push them down further. And then even if we needed it really accurate, you could do multiple cloners. So like this cloner is cloning onto those edges, but we could say, yeah, that's all well and good. Let's shrink the spheres more. And keep in mind they are sinking through the body of the T-Rex. So you see all of them. But then you see we get like some relatively large gaps, like that might start getting too big of a hole. So we can make another copy of the cloner. Oops, don't clone the cloner. And say this one is on polygon center. And now you see it creates a sphere in the center of every polygon. So you can make more and more and more of those as you need to and make it as accurate as you need to, sinking it really far into the body. And until you get someplace really skinny just by doing that. And really, depending on what the situation is, you only need them where you need them. And you know, potentially you could even turn it on and off at particular times. Like those don't all need to exist until this would happen to be colliding with it. And then once it is colliding with it, then now it doesn't escape. So yeah, that's a super duper advanced way. Well, not advanced, I mean, relatively straightforward concept. And it just goes to my sphere concept of like, hey, when you're having trouble with dynamics escaping from an almost impossible situation, put spears in because they're super accurate, or if it's like flat areas, put a floor, because a floor is another shape that it's like, oh, I know I can't go through this floor. Mathematically, I cannot go through. So I wish the T-Rex looped, but I don't think... oh, maybe... There's a big old offset on it. I wonder what that means. That's a little bit more motion. But yeah. And we could just clone this on the entire T-Rex if we wanted to. But yeah, it's definitely not passing through the neck. So yeah, that should wrap that up. That question puts us pretty much in time. Perfect on time. Let me... let's go to... I'm just checking if there's any questions that are kind of on any of the stuff we tackled to get more specific. The RBLX is saying that the cube is supposed to be the fastest calculation. It could be. I'm surprised that a cube would be, because a sphere, like calculating if you're inside a sphere, is a single distance calculation, where a cube would be a vector of like, oh, it's got this dimension, this dimension, this dimension. So I'm surprised if it's not. I mean, I guess, you know, we could clone a bunch of cubes on here, but cubes have sharp edges, and so something might get caught on a cube, whereas a sphere, nothing can get caught on it. And yeah, I mean, a cube could totally work, but you know, spheres are my go-to. And often I was doing this type of thing on like gears, and gears calculating a cube or a sphere is quicker than a cube. But definitely cubes are the second object I go to. If you don't want something rotating around, then a cube's a good way to go. And a cube might give you better friction, but that's my thought. Thank you, Sean. Thanks for hanging out. Thank you, Tobias, for the reminder. If you're not already part of the Rocket Lasso community, then you should go and join it. You can just head on over to rocketlasso.com/community and join the Slack channel. Some advantages to using the Slack channel if you do head over to do that. If you're subscribed to the live channel, then I @ the channel when I go live, and that way you can always know when the newest stream is beginning. I know it's difficult to catch it on YouTube. If you're on Twitch, it's really good to sign up for free and follow me, because then you get an email when I go live as well, so that is nice. If you want to support Rocket Lasso, then there's two main ways to do it. One would be supporting on Patreon. If you support on Patreon, you get all the scene files I was saving today and all the ones in the past, and you get access to all of the recordings and tutorials early, and you get access to bonus streams. Right now we're trying to get a plugin out, so I haven't been doing too many live streams, but usually there's 2 every week. In addition to that, you get discounts on the other way of supporting Rocket Lasso, and that is the tools that we have. We have some tools we've been launching. We've got 3 out right now, which is Recall, Ricochet, and Mesh to Spline. 2 of those are spline tools. They're really cool. If you haven't seen them, I will be playing one of the commercials as we wrap this up. Buying a plugin, it helps you with your job. It helps create cool new things, and it supports us as a company. And we're still trying to grow that a little bit to become a viable company for 3 people to be working here. And I'd love to be able to expand at some point and get more people involved. But that's where we're right now. If you want to support, that's a great way to do it. You should find links below in the description to get those tools if you are interested in supporting me and these streams and the tutorials. Anyway, that's going to wrap up today's stream. I'll see everybody in a week, and hopefully very soon we'll be getting another tool launched as well. So that should do it. Everybody have a good, productive, fun, healthy week, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye, everybody.